What's up in War Eagle War Report family? You got Ike Jones back with another morning drop. Today we are talking about the NFL draft and where the Auburn Tigers landed in that draft. Let's get straight to it. Y'all know how we do right here, War Report style. Let's drop it on them.
You are now listening to the War Report.
Morning drop. It is Monday, April the 29th. Hopefully everybody's week is off to a good start right here with the Auburn Express is the best way to get your morning started. Hopefully, again, you are feeling good. We are going to get in here and talk some Auburn football. The NFL draft happened over the weekend. Auburn had a few players, 5 to be exact, were drafted. And we'll talk about where all of those draft picks went and kind of fit and all of those sorts of things. Before we get into the conversation, hopefully you all are already doing that, but go ahead and share the content out there with somebody, whether you're listening on podcast or you're watching on YouTube. We definitely appreciate that share of the content. But let's get into it. Auburn, again, had 5 draft picks. I'm going to be honest, a little disappointed in where some of the guys went. I thought that they were, it's great picks or value picks for where they went, in my opinion. Now, draft analyses might vary a little bit, but some guys went lower than I thought that they would be. And, what happened at the combine and all those things I thought would kind of entice some GMs to take some flyers on some guys. And it just didn't really happen that way. But let's just take a look at where all of the Auburn Tigers are finding a home coming up here, going into the next NFL season. We'll start off with the first guy off of the board, and this was probably the surprise for me is who was drafted first of the defensive backs. I figured it would be defensive backs going first, but who was drafted first, I think, was a little bit more interesting to me. Nehemiah Pritchett, drafted at 136 overall, round 5, going to the Seattle Seahawks. 2 Auburn Tigers going to the Seattle Seahawks. We'll get to the other guy in just a minute, even though you see it right there on the graphic if you're watching on YouTube. But round 5 is the first place where an Auburn Tiger got off the board here, with Nehemiah Pritchett going to the Seattle Seahawks. The next one you have Jalen Simpson, also in round 5 at pick 164. He was drafted by the Indianapolis Colts. Next up, you have DJ James, the other Seattle Seahawk, around 6, pick 192 overall. Justin Rogers came off of the board next at round 7, pick 244 overall, going to the Dallas Cowboys. And Marcus Harris was the last Auburn Tiger selected in the draft, round 7, pick 247 overall, going to the Houston Texans. Now, if you heard us talk about the draft before, where all of these guys are picked in the draft right now, you don't expect them to get a lot of playing time initially. In fact, they're going to be fighting for spots. They're really going to have to go out and perform well in training camp, and they're going to need to really make themselves useful on special teams and those sorts of things to be able to really make the roster when it comes down to it. Because when you start getting to 5th, 6th, 7th round, those aren't really guaranteed spots. Those are guys who are in there, and they're really what most GMs would consider projects, right? Their ceiling might be high, but they don't really expect a lot from them initially as far as going out there. But there are some really good gems. But let's start with the very beginning. Again, I did not expect Nehemiah Pritchett to be the first DB off the board. Now he posted. Listen, GMs are in love with 40 times and they're in love with measurables. And Nehemiah Pritchett is impressive in those things. I definitely thought that the first DB off of the board was going to be Jalen Simpson. And I actually thought that DJ James would have been the next one off of the board, with Pritchett being third. And Pritchett surprised me with that. I think that Nehemiah Pritchett being able to run as well as he did, and just having the number of quality years he had as an outside corner starting in the SEC paid dividends for him. He is the better tackler of the 2 defensive backs on the outside corners between he and DJ James. I think DJ James is the better cover corner. But Pritchett probably, again, the speed and then his ability to tackle in space a little bit better than what DJ James had shown the ability to do is probably why you see him get drafted a little bit higher. But 5th round, I thought that one of these guys would be off of the board by 3rd or 4th round at the latest. Being in the 5th round was a little surprising for me, but definitely good to see Auburn players getting so much love from the Seattle Seahawks. If you'll recall, last year Derek Hall was drafted by the Seahawks, and now two defensive backs both drafted by the Seahawks. Seahawks really trying to get a physical and imposing secondary back there. So it kind of had been going down by the wayside a little bit there. But again, fifth and sixth round picks at defensive backs, both outside corners. Not guys that they're expecting to come in and light the world on fire immediately, but they definitely got themselves some help for a secondary that had not been great over the last few seasons. Good, but not great. And they needed some help at the defensive back. So they got that in two Auburn Tigers that I think are going to be good. Now, you got Ike Jones, not a fan of the Seahawks, but I'm a fan of Auburn players going out there and making a name for themselves. So best of luck to both of those guys as they continue. Jalen Simpson, in my opinion, again, was the guy who had the highest capability out there at the NFL. He played on the outside as a cornerback, played at safety, and really saw his stock rise at safety. Just got really good instincts. But he is considered a tweener, right? He's a guy who they don't really know where to put him. Is he a safety? Is he an outside corner? He's not really, big and imposing down in the box as a safety. He's not really the lengthy, rangy corner that a lot of teams are really going for these days. So he's kind of in between. But listen, man, Simp is he's a ball player. You go put on the film and you see him go out there and you see him make plays consistently. That plus the numbers that he put up at the combine, I thought would have gotten him. He was the guy that I was expecting to be third, fourth round. Honestly, didn't happen for him, but he was able to get himself a roster spot right now as a draft pick with the Indianapolis Colts, a Colts team that has a pretty good defense, and so he'll be not great, but like they're pretty good defensively. I don't have the numbers right here in front of me, but a Colts team that has been pretty good defensively the last few seasons, particularly last year. So he's joined a group and he'll be able to get in there and really make some noise. I think that Jalen Simpson is a supremely talented athlete and will do great things in the NFL over his career. Justin Rogers is up next, and this also surprised me, right? The two defensive linemen, I figured they'd be going towards the back half of the draft, but I did think that Marcus Harris was going to come off the board before Justin Rogers. Now, Justin Rogers is, from most GM standpoint, probably the more prototypical as far as the size of a NFL lineman. He's the bigger of the two. He's the guy that played on the interior more as far as a nose tackle or, whatever technique you want to call it. He was there on the far interior. So he from a physical standpoint, and then, really just even coming out of high school, was the guy who was the more pro-ready prospect. But I thought Marcus Harris had a better career. And, he took the long route, went to Kansas, wasn't very highly sought after coming out of high school, and then hit the transfer portal, came to Auburn, and I think did really well as an SEC starter for a couple of seasons. Really surprised that he was coming off of the board after Justin Rogers, but both of those guys in, I think, good landing spots for them. Justin Rogers going to the Dallas Cowboys and Marcus Harris going to the Houston Texans. That Dallas Cowboys defense needs more physicality up front. They kind of got pushed around in some games. It's a good defense as well. There in Dallas, they have a lot of talent on the outside, a lot of skill on that defense, but they just lack some physicality. And I guess they're hoping that Justin Rogers can bring that to their interior defensive line. And then Marcus Harris, that Houston defense is been ferocious under their first year head coach there. So looking forward to seeing Marcus Harris be able to get in there and earn himself a spot, just because I think he's another guy who's extremely talented. Not to be ignored in all of this is the idea that Nehemiah Pritchett and DJ James came back for an additional season to try to improve their draft stock, right? And I wonder now, with them being drafted here subsequently 5 and 6 fifth and sixth rounders, what the number was going into last season and whether or not that additional year helped or hurt the draft stock of those young men. I'd be interested to know kind of what the projections were year over year for those two and whether they feel as if that additional year actually helped them at all. And then, the other thing is Marcus Harris and Justin Rogers both could have come back for an additional year. And, being seventh round draft picks, I do wonder whether or not the decision to leave and go to the NFL was the best decision for those young men as far as next season is concerned, considering NIL was available to them and how much they'd be able to make in that. Knowing what they did, I just wonder what the projections were for those guys in terms of those things. But listen, it's done now. They are out there and they've been drafted and allowed the opportunity to go out there and make rosters for the NFL. Congratulations to all the 2024 draft class for the Auburn Tigers. Looking forward to seeing that continue to progress with those young men. But we need to talk about some other guys that are going to get an opportunity. But before we do, just got to get a quick word in from the show sponsor, and that is the folks over at Rogue Shop. Of course, RogueShop.com is the sponsor of the Morning Drop right here, and they are bringing you America's best online dispensary, the number one out there if you have sleep, stress, anxiety, pain relief needs. Head over to RogueShop.com and use code REPORT when you do. That'll get you a little something off your purchase, and tell them that the War Report sent you. RogueShop.com. Let's get back over here and talk a little bit more about the NFL draft. Now, there were some other young men for the Auburn Tigers that had hopes to have their name called during the NFL draft. All of these guys ran out of eligibility, right? So they are, they went to the draft because this was the next stop for them on their career path. There were another 5 Auburn Tigers who got invites to either as undrafted free agents to be able to sign a free agent deal with a team, or were sent invites to come participate in some sort of pre-draft situation, mini camp or whatever. Started off with our guy, Gunnar Britton, the offensive lineman, got a undrafted free agent offer from the Buffalo Bills. So looking forward to seeing how Gunnar Britton can get up there and potentially make a team that needs some help on the offensive line. Right? Their quarterback was out there having to run for his life quite a bit. Hopefully, Gunnar Britton can get in there with his versatility at multiple spots along the offensive line, be able to make waves up in Buffalo. He was previously before at Auburn. He wasn't up there in Buffalo in that kind of cold weather. So hopefully Gunnar is able to, he's ready. I'm talk to Gunnar and see if he's ready for those Buffalo winters up there. Next up, safety Zion Puckett got an invitation to minicamp for the New York Jets. This is a guy who had some up and down seasons with Auburn. I do believe that he has pro talent and abilities. The issue for him, again, is similar to Jalen Simpson, with a little less tape to be able to give you an idea of how he'll be able to slot. Is he's a tweener. He's a guy that kind of fits between safety and linebacker as far as his size and speed is concerned, and skill. And I do wonder whether or not they're going to try to put him as, more of a floating box safety. Now, the New York Jets already have a guy in Jamie and Sherwood that plays that kind of position. And, they have a defense that's able to feature those tweener guys in it. So it's a good pickup for them to be able to see whether or not Zion Puckett fills in that. The guys in the defensive back room all would say Zion Puckett was one of the smarter players out there, and his ability to kind of understand things will pay dividends for him at the next level. So looking forward to seeing what Zion Puckett's able to do with his invitation to mini camp. Hopefully he's able to stay healthy, and he's going to go out there and he's going to do his thing. Next up, you have offensive lineman Avery Jones, who came over, and his express purpose for coming over, as well as Gunnar Britton, was to be able to make a name for himself in his final year of eligibility in college, and be able to put himself on the draft boards. And that's exactly what he did. He was previously at East Carolina. His time at Auburn allows him to get a free agent deal with the Tampa Bay Bucks. So hopefully he's able to, as an undrafted free agent, get in there and be a part of the protection unit for Baker Mayfield, who is currently slated as the QB for the Tampa Bay Bucks. So looking forward to our guy Avery Jones being out there. Really intelligent offensive lineman, had a lot of starting experience, and injuries derailed his season at Auburn, but hopefully he'll get an opportunity to really show what he can do at Tampa. Next up, you have Cam Stutz, who is headed to Baltimore for a rookie camp invitation. So this one's a little bit, the camp invitations are a little less secure, even more so than the undrafted free agent deals. but they are basically going to go try out, right? Undrafted free agents are going to try out, but they at least have some money attached to that, and they'll be able to make a little something and hopefully be able to make the team. But the rookie camp deals are basically tryouts. And so Cam Stutz is getting a rookie camp tryout. He's gotten that invitation to go to Baltimore to do that. Cam Stutz, another guy who I don't know if prior to this season, Cam Stutz was on anybody's draft board or would have got those sort of invitations. I think Cam Stutz really made a name for himself in his final year of eligibility, took advantage of all of the eligibility that COVID year to be able to come back and really raise his name in the eyes of agents, or excuse me, of scouts out there for the NFL. So congrats to Cam Stutz for getting that invitation. And last, Mosiah Nasili Kite headed to the best NFL franchise to ever play on the gridiron. The San Francisco 49ers got a mini camp invitation over there. He is a guy who, again, injuries were an issue for him, and he probably would have been a higher draft pick had he or been a at least undrafted free agent, potentially late round draft pick had he been able to play for the entirety of last season. I do think that he's a guy that would have been a difference maker in a lot of ways in his versatility at the defensive end spot for Auburn. So glad to see him get an opportunity at least to get a camp invitation, and hopefully he is fully healed and ready to go out there and impact the world of football. And if he does really well, and stays with the 49ers, then he's going to be on a championship quality team. So congrats to Mosiah Nasili Kite for that. But that makes 5 guys drafted for Auburn and 5 that got invitations either as undrafted free agents or as camp invitees. And listen, they talked about it a little bit on the show. Well, most of the show, if you didn't watch the weekend tailgate over on YouTube for the War Report, there was a conversation about whether or not the trajectory of Auburn football is headed in a direction where more guys are going to be able to get out there and show what they have for NFL prospects, or do we have more NFL prospects on this roster coming up this season? And that's something that we'll definitely dive into a little bit more. But if you want to hear more of that conversation, head over to the War Report YouTube channel and you can hear the guys discuss that on the weekend tailgate show. But I'll say this, having only 5 guys, all of them be on the defense, once again, no offensive guys drafted for Auburn, shows just really the deficit as far as pro level talent that Auburn was working with last season. And the fact that this team was still able to be competitive shows a lot for just the heart and the grit. I've heard a lot of people talk about whether or not this team competed. Listen, to be able to be competitive with a squad full of guys that aren't considered to be NFL caliber talents based upon how many were draft eligible and how many actually got drafted says a lot about what this team is capable of going into next season, with more guys that people feel as if translate to the next level. I think Hugh Freeze has a keen eyesight on trying to get guys that from at least a size and shape and physicality standpoint fit what NFL execs are going to be looking for. And now it's going to be on him and his staff to be able to put those young men in the right position so that they're able to see their names called on draft night, and hopefully called a little bit earlier than the 5th round this time. Congrats, though, to everybody who was able to get their name called, and look forward to following their journey at the next level. It's enough of me talking about all this stuff. What I want to hear from you all, and I always want to hear something in the comment section, is what do you feel about the draft position for some of these guys? Who were the surprises for you as far as where they were drafted or whether they were drafted at all? And I'd like to hear what your thoughts are on NFL caliber talents on this team coming up, because I do believe that there are a few that will be eligible for next season. So look forward to dissecting all of that coming up here soon. Again, the morning drop is brought to you by the good folks at Rogue Shop. Make sure you head over there and use code RAPPORT. Before you get out of here, make sure you're sharing the content. If you're on YouTube, like the video. If you're out there in the podcast land, make sure you give us that 5-star review. We'll be back at you with another morning drop tomorrow. But that's all I got for you. Until the next time, and as always, War Eagle.